For years, our extraterrestrial visitors have been toying with military personnel across the world. Basically, a lot of people believe that they're just showing them what they're capable of, like showing off. I don't know if I believe that. And in particular, there's one thing that these beings are able to do, and they could shut down our nuclear capabilities instantaneously whenever they want, apparently. And I'm going to go over a couple of different articles here. There's one here from recently, actually. This is actually from October 21st. It was in the New York Post. A former Air Force chief claims he once saw UFO firing at nuke missiles launched from secret base. And I'll read a little bit of this article. I will also leave the link there for you. Now, this has been reported before. I've heard about this. I've seen this guy. But anyway, we'll get into this here. A former Air Force chief claimed today how he saw a UFO firing 4 beams of light at a nuclear missile undergoing testing. Ex-United States Air Force First Lieutenant Robert Jacobs alleged a craft resembling a flying saucer circled the dummy warhead during a test flight in California in 1964. But despite his claims of what he saw, the former serviceman was ordered never to breathe a word of what he saw, a bombshell press conference heard. Along with other former American Air Force chiefs, Dr. Jacobs was giving evidence about how aliens tampered with weapons systems during tests at nuclear bases and even shut the missiles down. Giving his testimony at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., he said, "I was part of a United States Air Force cover-up. It was shaped like a flying saucer and was firing a beam of light at our warhead. On September 14th, 1964, he was in charge of a 100-man unit. Jacobs had been dispatched to the Big Sur in California to photograph with high-speed instrumentation an Atlas D missile launch from Vandenberg. This is because all 3 stages of the rocket's powered flight were to be observed, including the separation of a dummy warhead on the edge of space." But the next day, Dr. Jacobs, now a professor at Bradley University, said he was called into the office of Major Florence J. Mansman, where 3 people in gray suits were standing, whom he later claimed were CIA. He said, Major Mansman said, "Lieutenant, sit down and watch this." He turned the projector on, and the most amazing thing happened. Dr. Jacobs continued, "We could see the bottom 3 stages of that rocket filling the frame from 160 miles away. It was amazing. The clarity was beautiful, and we watched it go through all 3 stages of powered flight. The nose cone opened up, and radar shaft aluminum foil spread out. We were testing to see if we could launch a nuclear warhead into orbit slightly above the nuclear shaft, so the Russians would aim their anti-missile missiles at the shaft, and our little warhead would fly over and obliterate Moscow. That was the game we were playing. Horrifying to think about it in retrospect." But suddenly, from in the frame, he claimed they saw an object following the test missile, which was traveling at 8,000 miles per hour. The UFO was said to have homed in and fired 4 beams at the warhead. Dr. Jacobs said, "Then it flew out of the frame the same way it had come in. At that point, the warhead tumbled out of space. The light came on, and Major Mansman and the 2 guys in gray suits looked at me, and the major said, 'Were you guys screwing around up there?' I said, 'No, sir.' And he said, 'What was that?' And I said, 'It looks to me like we have a UFO.' But the baffled young lieutenant was ordered to belt up or else." Dr. Jacobs said, "He escorted me to his door and said, 'I don't need to remind you of the seriousness of the security breach.' I said, 'No, sir.' But as I left, he leaned over to speak in my ear as if to say something the guys in the suits couldn't hear. He said, 'Lieutenant, if you were ever tortured in the future, somebody has you up against the wall and they're frying your privates with fire. You can tell them this. It was laser tracking. But we never had laser tracking in 1964. He added, "What we are here today to tell you is this is a real event that is the most important event in the history of mankind. We are not alone." and I'll leave the link here. It gets into this Robert Salas, but I'm going to talk about that and there was another article here from over 10 years ago, actually, where he was talking about that. It was from CBS News from 2010. I will leave the link there for that too. I recommend reading both of these articles because it's very interesting. And anyway, this goes to show you that these things have the ability, basically, to prevent us from using our nuclear weapons. They could just make them completely useless. You could look at that as a good thing or a bad thing, but why are they doing it? Now, a lot of people will say, well, it's because they're just trying to show us, hey, we don't want you to do this, and they're just trying to illustrate to us their power, that, hey, just so you know, we're here and we could stop you from using these things at any time we want. They're useless against us. That's one train of thought. The other train of thought, which I think is probably more prevalent, is that they're not concerned about what we think. I think that these things happened because they are just testing their own systems. This place has nuclear warheads, and let's test out our systems and make sure we could shut all this stuff down. And I think that's what happened in this other case, which we're going to talk about right now, that happened in 1967. Anyway, here's the article from CBS News from September 2010. Ex-Air Force personnel, UFOs deactivated nukes. Whatever the mysterious lights in the sky were, they seemed to have an interest in our nukes. One of the more out-of-the-ordinary press conferences held in Washington this week consisted of former Air Force personnel testifying to the existence of UFOs and their ability to neutralize American and Russian nuclear missiles. It goes on here. Stars and Stripes quoted former Air Force Captain Robert Salas, who was at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana in 1967, when 10 ICMs he was overseeing suddenly became inoperative. At the same time, base security informed him of a mysterious red glowing object in the sky. Robert Jameson, a retired United States Air Force nuclear missile targeting officer, told of several occasions having to go out and restart missiles that had been deactivated after UFOs were sighted nearby. Similar sightings at nuclear sites in the former Soviet Union and Britain were related. CBS affiliate KSWT describes Britain's Roswell, a case of unidentified phenomena in a December 1980 incident near two Royal Air Force bases in Suffolk, England. Several U.S. Air Force personnel reported seeing a strange metallic object hovering in Rendlesham Forest near RAF Woodbridge and found 3 depressions in the ground. Again, this was one of these press conferences that happened 11 years ago, and then you have the more recent one that the New York Post is talking about here, where some of these same stories are related, and including the more recent one from Dr. Jacobs. But I mean, it all goes to show that these things, they have the ability to completely make our nuclear weapons systems inoperable and useless at any time. I mean, they just show up, and there's nothing we can do about it. And again, I don't know if it's them, the aliens themselves saying, I don't subscribe to this one. I don't think it's the aliens coming down and saying, okay, we're going to stop this. We're going to teach you a lesson. We're going to show you what we're capable of doing. I don't think they're thinking about that at all. I think what they're doing is they're testing their own systems to make sure they could shut it down. Because I'm going to get into something else here. Recently I talked about the possibility that maybe at some point, maybe there's an attack imminent, from these beings at some point in the future. That's why, the military is concerned, because they just don't know exactly what they're up to. And that's very possible. I mean, just because, these things have, really came into focus in 1947. Of course, there were UFOs that were seen throughout the centuries, actually. There's been reports of things in the sky throughout the centuries. But it wasn't until 1947, only 2 years after we started using atomic bombs were going off, that they really showed up, and it seemed like in force, and then everybody started seeing these things. And they've been here ever since, A lot. There's been a lot of different events over the years where people see these things. Military, a lot of military, more military personnel see these things, come in contact with these things, seemingly than anybody else. Okay, they more military people flying planes for the Navy or the Air Force or whoever, jet planes that have rockets on them. They come in contact with these things a lot, all the time. It's seemingly. More than anybody. And of course, we don't hear a lot about it. We're starting to hear about it now a little bit more, of course, with this slow disclosure. But over the decades, it seems like military people come in contact with these things more than anybody else. Of course, there's other aspects to this, the abduction phenomena, people getting abducted, and but the big thing is that it seems military people are dealing with this a lot over the decades. And so, what does it mean? Like, why they're coming here? They're shutting us down. What's the purpose of it? Now, you think about this. A lot of astronauts will tell. There's been reports from people. Astronauts. In space who say they see UFOs and it seems like they're watching them. Like, what if what's going on is that they're watching us, they're keeping a close eye on us, and they're just watching our growth. But when we get to a certain point of technological advancement, that's when the party's going to be over, because that could mean that we at that point have become a threat, and maybe they feel at this point that right now we're not a threat. So, when you're an advanced race of beings, I'm sure you're a million more years advanced than humans, or 100,000 years, or whatever it is. You look at this and we just can't destroy all these people. That's not who we are. We're smarter than that, and that would be true. However, at the same time, if and when we do become a threat to them, then they might have a different thoughts about how to handle us, and that might be okay. Now we got to make a decision. It's not like the United States trying to figure out. Okay, we think Iraq has nuclear weapons of mass destruction. We're not sure, but yeah, we think they do. So we're gonna go, and then they're gonna go in and just kill a million people will die, or whatever the number is, and millions and billions of dollars are spent, and nothing really good comes out of it at all. I mean, I don't think aliens would operate the way we do with regard to these kind of things. So they're just biding their time. They're waiting for that moment when they believe that they're threatened, that we've grown to a point technologically that we've become a threat. We're already threats to each other. So naturally, if we were to somehow ever reach the levels of technology that they possess, or come close, or start inching closer toward that, then they're going to be like, you know what? Yeah, maybe it's time to end this whole thing. Because look what they do. Look what they do to each other. I mean, it's just constant. We're at war all the time. It seems for stupid reasons, greed, money, to appease weapons manufacturers, keep them in business, make them money. That's all it is. I mean, basically, or stupidity. I mean, some of us out there are just maniacs. I just read an article a couple of days ago where. I think it was somewhere in Tennessee, where some guy walks into a Little Caesars pizza restaurant, and he wants this pizza that's supposed to be made quickly, but apparently I guess they were busy and they didn't have one ready for him, and he got upset, went out to his car, grabbed an AK-47 and walked in and started pointing this weapon at everybody and demanded he get his pizza right now. One of the other customers there happened to just receive one of these pizzas, and she gave him her pizza, and the guy walked out on his merry way. Of course, he's facing all kinds of charges now, but that's what we're dealing with here. I mean, luckily nobody was hurt there, but a lot of instances like that, it wouldn't be surprising if you did hear somebody was hurt or killed. I mean, within this past week, you had some maniac driving through a Christmas parade in Wisconsin. It's just constant. We're monsters, a lot of us. So if we become more technological, if we start getting closer to technological advancements that our extraterrestrial visitors possess, they're gonna look at us as like, okay, they're a threat. They're a threat to us. Maybe it's time to just call it a day with the human race, because they can't get their shit together, obviously, and I don't think they ever will. We haven't. We don't seem to be able to get it together. Anyway, just a thought.